I have to do this video differently from most of my other videos. It's just kind of the subject matter, because I never expected to be making a video on Avatar: The Last Airbender. For years, I him and hawed on the idea of it, and ultimately decided against it, because I talk about anime, and by most definitions, Avatar is not anime. Therefore, it's something that I shouldn't talk about, since it's not within my realm of expertise. Sure, it's an animated series, and its style and content are anime-inspired. Heck, its sequel series Korra was even at times animated by Japanese studio Harriet. You know, the guys that animated Tokyo Ghoul? Yeah, well, they did 7 episodes of Korra. But Avatar was a show created by Americans, written by Americans, and aired on an American channel for an American audience. The show is American in origin, and as such does not qualify as an anime. At least not as far as many Westerners generally define the term. Now, I'm not going to go further into what does and does not qualify as anime. That's something worthy of its own video, but I am personally of the mind that Avatar is not anime. Yet, I also believe that any fan of anime will enjoy watching Avatar for the same reasons that they love anime. It may not be anime, but that should not stop you from watching it like it was one. So, ladies, gentlemen, and others, my name is Arcada, and welcome to Glass Reflection. Today, the 2005 animated series made for Nickelodeon, Avatar: The Last Airbender. Let's jam.
Some people believe that the Avatar was never reborn into the air nomads and that the cycle is broken. But I haven't lost hope. I still believe that somehow the Avatar will return to save the world.
The TLDR of me talking about Avatar, ignoring the before explained "what is anime" argument, is thus. It's not a perfect series. There are several dips and bends that Avatar makes as a piece of entertainment, but it's one of the best animated series from North America that I have seen. I would even put it leagues ahead of many other Japanese animated shows that I have watched. It's a show that has this balanced blend of comedy, action, and characters, a balance that make its episodes absolute joys to watch. In my review for The 7 Deadly Sins, I said that that was a show where each episode went by so fast enough that you don't even notice the episodes passed you by because you were just enjoying it so much. Avatar is similar, except for me it went by even faster. A year ago is when I first watched the series, and when I did, I ended up going through it at an average of a season a day. I just turned it on and stopped when it felt like the sun was rising to bring in a new day, when I needed some sleep because I was past the point where coffee would help me. Avatar follows the story of the last remaining bender of air, Aang. In this world, there are special individuals who can bend the 4 elements of the world: air, water, earth, and fire. While there are many tribes of people dedicated to each of these 4 arts, Aang is the last of his tribe. He is also the mystical Avatar, because in this world, there can only be one person at a time who can master all 4 elements, and that person is the Avatar. There's a lot of mysticism here that makes the story's origin compelling. It's like how the Force and Jedi worked in the early days of Star Wars. You don't need to know how the Force works to think that it's cool and awesome. Just like here, we don't need any kind of scientific explanation on why and how bending works. Certainly don't need an explanation on why and how the Avatar exists, because that would be akin to introducing midichlorians to this series. Good thing that never happened. Right, Korra? Anyway, while we never have scientific explanations in Avatar, the show has many in-universe explanations for why things work. Also, many of the traditions of the people in Avatar were based on actual real-life cultures. Bending is an example. The 4 different kinds of bending all have their own individual martial art influence. There is much of the show that comes off as a love letter to Asian cultures, anime, to Hong Kong kung fu films. This makes the show, despite being for children, still have a kind of mature seriousness to it at times. It's the seriousness that draws people into its story, similar to why people like me watch Japanese animation. For me, I started watching anime back in the day because what I watched from Japan was just so new, so different. Anime drew me in because it had the fluid nature of cartoons. It had the ability to bend reality that live action shows could not, but it did so in a serious and real way. Anime never treated me like a child, even with the shows designed for them. Too often in American animation, you get that feeling that this was meant only for a child, like at times it's talking down to you. Anime never did that for me, and Avatar is a rare American series that does the same thing. Which leads me into being able to talk about one of the best things that Avatar has. Life lessons done right. Because ultimately, the series is about a group of children going on an adventure. Along the way, they learn things about the world and about life that every child usually goes through. But how the show handles it is different from others. It never comes off as a show that preaches to its audience. Each lesson it teaches is not something that's focused on specifically. The characters don't end off each episode talking about what they learned, which is astounding when one of the best characters preaches advice left and right. Uncle Iroh is one of the best characters in animation. This includes anime, by the way. Iroh is never the focus of the story, never in the spotlight, but he guides the characters like his nephew Zuko in a way that is so profound and full of wisdom. Instead of Iroh lecturing the audience bluntly, he teaches characters in ways that helps them. But in doing so, he has the audience learn so that they don't make similar mistakes.
I know what you're gonna say. She's my sister and I should be trying to get along with her.
No, she's crazy and she needs to go down.
True, he's a caricature at times, being that old sage sprouting Chinese proverbs, but there are times when his advice is moving and emotional. Here's a good example of what I mean.
What are you doing here?
I was just about to ask you the same thing. What do you plan to do now that you have found the Avatar's bison? Keep it locked in our new apartment? Should I go put on a pot of tea for him?
First I have to get it out of here.
And then what? You never think these things through. This is exactly what happened when you captured the Avatar at the North Pole. You had him, and then you had nowhere to go.
In this scene, Iroh is confronting Zuko about how he never plans for the future, how he always seems like he's just going through life by the seat of his pants and never looks at the big picture. But he's also pleading with him to not continue to try to please or live up to the expectations of others, instead to live for himself. In just about a minute, he is able to cover both of these aspects of Zuko's character. It's masterful, and the show has many moments of writing like this. But the show is not all life lessons and sage advice. It does contain plenty of action, even from characters who you'd least expect it from. Like the other best character that Avatar has to offer, Toph. Toph is blind. She is a young blind girl who also just happens to be the best earthbender in the world. She has a daredevil-like ability to be badass and see without eyes. She's also the reason why I watched this show to begin with. Like, I kept on seeing her scenes posted online, and I wanted to know what her story was, what her deal was. Toph is an example of a character introduced to cover diversity and disabilities, mostly because no one else ever touches these topics, so it's wide open for awesome stories to occur. Too often, in many cultures, disabilities are something that's frowned upon. They are something not normal, something to be pitied. But Avatar decides to say, screw that, let's have one of the most powerful benders be a little blind girl. Not only that, let's show the world how a disability can make a person stronger. She has moments of weakness, yes. She can't read, she can't see the enemy attack her if they're in the air. Also, in less ideal conditions, she is hindered by her environment, but she is far from useless or weak. And she's not the only one. Early on in season 1, we have a wheelchair-bound child take flight in a glider. Heck, even Zuko has something to a similar effect. Having half of his face burnt off is something that in our society would place him in the outcast category. But they all have their stories of awesomeness that make Avatar what it is. I haven't even talked about main characters either, jeez. Avatar has this weird kind of entertainment value. While watching it, I could see its flaws. The entire third season was far lower in story quality than what the previous seasons offered. Despite that, though, it was still enjoyable. At that point, you've fallen so far in love with these characters that the rest rarely matters. On top of which, Avatar is a series that is an example of pre-planning and arc building done right. You see, if you look at a show with 3 seasons like this, what you normally get is a show with 3 clear and concise arcs. arcs that each have their own stories, climaxes, and conclusions, but they are arcs that are separate from each other. Here, though, that is not the case. The main goals get defined early on, and that narrative lasts all the way until the final episode. Sure, there are subplots disguised as their own arcs, but the true story of the show is always present. It's always visible, and eventually, it concludes. This reminds me of one of my favorite science fiction shows ever, Babylon 5. Bab 5 is a show that has an entire narrative arc that was conceived before the first episode was ever written. The result was one long story that has the same cohesiveness as 1/5 of its length. Avatar feels like that. You know early on how Avatar is gonna end. Aang is going to defeat the Fire Lord and save the world. But you keep watching because the journey of Aang from an uppity airbender to a proper avatar is what is compelling about this show. The story of Zuko fighting against the desire to please his father is what is compelling about the show. The nuances of the villains, from the Fire Lord to his daughter Azula, is what is compelling about this show. Sokka's failure at romance is what is compelling about this show.
My first girlfriend turned into the moon. That's rough, buddy.
Avatar is a series that I am disappointed others have not taken pointers from. It's a show that takes various elements that we've all seen before, plucky young characters pitted against an ultimate evil, fighting for freedom and peace, but the show expands so much from those traditional cliche elements. Its characters are more than just archetypes or embodiments of tropes. Instead, they are daughters, they are sons, they are enemies while also being friends. The depth of all the characters is so much vaster than any other show of its kind. It makes this series so much more than just some young kid setting off to fight evil. It's about the relationships that the characters have. It's about how they interact and learn from one another, how they develop into living, breathing people. If you've never watched Avatar before, allow me then to recommend a single episode for you. From season 2, there is an episode called Tales from Ba Sing Se. It's unique because it's not one story that takes up 25 minutes. It's a collection of short stories. Stories about various characters who are now living in the Earth Kingdom city of Ba Sing Se. It doesn't advance the main story of Aang fighting the Fire Lord, nor does it continue any other characters' storylines. In fact, most people would consider this episode to be useless filler. But it's an episode that is less of a progression for any of the characters and more of a summary of what some of them are. It's an example of what Avatar tries to do with its characters that other shows don't, and I highly recommend it. I just want to keep talking about this show because I've held off for so long that I could just sit here or stand and talk about it for hours. It reminds me of last year for the Review Week of Awesome when I reviewed Hunter x Hunter. I just had so much to say because that show was so long, but I didn't want to keep you guys here all day. So allow me to summarize again. Avatar has so much to it that many other American shows and even quite a few Japanese shows lack. It never draws out its content. It never sets up narrative arcs that don't get developed. It actually has narrative arcs, which sometimes don't occur in TV animation here in the West. It's a series filled with individual stories, paced quite well. Stories that develop its characters in ways that doesn't make it obvious that it's even doing it. My qualms with the show are few, the third season being one as, in my mind, never really matched the quality of season 2, which was the best by far. The intro to the show, Katara's speech about the world and Aang gets tiring when you marathon the series, and I just wish that the show had at least one more season to flesh out the remaining backstories of characters. You know, the ones that got teased to us but never got explained upon. Legend of Korra, while nice, couldn't do that, because it takes place so many years after the fact, so it's not quite the same. Avatar may not be anime, and I won't try to argue why people should consider it one, but it's the best non-Japanese anime series that I have watched, and as such, I am proud to present it with the Last Reflection rating of Certified Frosty, a rating I reserve only for the best of the best, and those shows too important to ignore. With Avatar, I think it more than covers both of those requirements. If you have never watched it, you are missing so much, and I highly recommend that you remedy that at the earliest opportunity. At the time of this video, Avatar: The Last Airbender is available from Nickelodeon on DVD. For legal streaming, I've heard it's available on Nickelodeon's website, but that's inaccessible from Canada, so I can't confirm. It's also on Netflix, but only if you live in the UK. To be honest, though, the DVDs are cheap as dirt, with most places running each season at only $20 each. Plus, the DVDs just aren't that hard to find. I'm not going to be giving alternate anime recommendations this time around, because Avatar itself is kind of one just big, giant recommendation for people who like similar shows, for people who just watch anime in general. So it's hard to compare Japanese anime to it, so I'm not going to try. Just Go watch Avatar. Do it. Do it! And finally, I would like to thank all of my patrons, including Joshua Garcia, Jocelyn Atkins, Lulika Adachi, Calhoun Boy, Victor Ekmark, and Nikolai Gray, without whom I would not be able to produce these videos to the same extent that I would like. And that's it for me. Thank you, gentle viewers, for watching. Until next time, stay frosty.
You guys are not gonna believe this. There's a play about us.
We were just in town and we found this poster. What? How is that possible?
My mother used to take us to see them. They butchered Love Amongst the Dragons every year.
Sokka, do you really think it's a good idea for us to attend a play about ourselves?
Come on, a day at the theater? This is the kind of wacky, time-wasting nonsense I've been missing. That wasn't a good play.
I'll say. No kidding. Horrible. You said it.
But the effects were decent.